We are having lunch on the third floor of my in-laws' house in Kathmandu, Nepal. When I say third floor, it basically means I married into money. But before you make any assumptions, let me clarify that I married for love. Okay, and good looks. So I was sitting at a dining table filled with fancy tableware, a mahogany hutch displaying the finest alcohol, fancy artwork on walls that I never really understand, and housemaids serving me lunch. While I was indulging in all of those luxuries, some of which I don't really get to enjoy now that I've moved to America, I hear a small screech-like sound. I immediately close my ears, knowing exactly what was coming. This is April 25th, 2015, and it looks like I'm about to die. I had waited 10 years for that exact same moment to materialize. Not the possible dying part, but the part where my parents finally agreed to meet the parents of the boy I love. I fell in love in 2005, my first year of college, and we eloped 7 years later. My parents refused to accept him as their son-in-law, purely on the basis of where he was born. Where I come from, marriages are preferred to be within the same community, and the person I chose wasn't even from the same country. I am from India, and he is from Nepal. His parents, however, adores me to this day, but had their apprehensions when a famous astrologer once told them we weren't a perfect match, and that if we were to get married, bad things will ensue. 2 years after we got married, when nothing bad actually ever happened, both sides finally decided to cool down and decided to meet in person. Little did I know that this much anticipated meeting would coincide with one of the biggest natural disasters of this century. I'm not really sure if that is the bad thing that astrologer was referring to. That particular day of April 25th, 2015, 10 years after we fell in love, while our parents are finally coming to an agreement, getting past weird conversations and awkward hugs, the tectonic plates underneath us began their very own disagreement. Our house starts to shake vehemently. It seemed nature was furious with us. The whole house started to dance to the tune of the monster beneath the ground. The truth is, I am not new to this tune. In fact, I have danced to this tune several times during my childhood growing up in Assam, India, where earthquakes are a common occurrence. But the ones I had experienced in the past were of lower magnitude, less duration, and most importantly, did not feel like I was on a roller coaster. Do you know who was the quickest on her feet? No offense to the 50-year-olds, but it was my then 50-year-old mother. She was the bravest of all. She was the first one to run towards safety, towards the staircase, urging me to accompany her. That wasn't surprising, considering I am the smartest one of her kids, and she obviously wanted to preserve me. But shock had overpowered me, and all I could do was shout like a maniac, "We are all going to die!" Obviously, I wasn't helping, so my mother-in-law gently pulled me towards her, but sternly asked me to shut the hell up. What else could I think of? Death seemed inevitable, and it was only a matter of seconds before our entire family is buried in debris, who, by the way, was only there because of me and my husband. We hear glassware and clay pots breaking, walls being stripped of stupid paintings, only to prove Death's point that it was coming to get us all. Remember, we are on the third floor here. My husband gathered some nerve and joined my mother in the stairway, trying to walk downstairs to safety. I see them struggle to hold the unpredictable, shaking stairs they were constantly trying, but failing. It was as if two people I loved the most in the world, who may or may not see eye to eye, were standing in solidarity in the face of death and saying what my favorite character from Game of Thrones, Arya Stark, once famously said, "Not today." We all followed them in the light of their courage. We all reached the second floor, only to see that a shoe rack had blocked our way. It is a cultural thing. People in the Indian subcontinent do not like to bring shoes inside, so we have dedicated furniture outside the house to put our shoes. Only that day, it wasn't a shoe rack, it was our death trap. And before I could scream, "We are now definitely going to die," my husband gathered some strength and removed the obstacle. We all eventually reached downstairs, the ground floor, one after the other, physically unharmed, but mentally shattered. Those were the worst 30 seconds of my life, where I was on the verge of losing the most important people in my life. Believe it or not, now when I plan trips, seismological data of the region is one of the first things I do in my research. For example, my daughter is really into Japanese culture. And she asked me, when can we go visit? And my answer was, I am not voluntarily stepping into one of the Earth's most earthquake-prone countries in the world. That is the reason I do not want to move to sunny California. However sunny it promises to be. When I was 7 months pregnant, we decided to visit Yellowstone National Park, a supervolcano. And when I entered the gate, I asked the park ranger, "What are the chances that this is going to blow up today?" He looked at me like I was crazy, and then he looks at my belly and is like, "Oh, that's the pregnant brain talking." It was a valid question. I was done with this nightmare, but apparently the nightmare was not done with me. In the next 72 hours, more than 300 earthquakes jolted the region, shattering my hopes of getting out of there alive. As if things couldn't get any weirder between my parents, we had to squeeze ourselves into a tiny room meant for the security guards to sleep. Remember, my in-laws are loaded. I noticed everyone was trying to put up a brave face and showing that they were not scared. But I can tell you, we were all shit scared. But I was the only one showing it. But you know what? Somewhere between those weird moments of putting up a brave face in the face of nature's fury, our parents connected. FYI, they don't even speak a common language. But our moms cooked together, and our dads talked using gestures and broken English words. They finally bonded, although not the way I had imagined them to be, but they did. If you ignore the fact that my parents ever refused to go back to Kathmandu to meet them, they've maintained a pretty healthy relationship. I was surprised that my mother didn't consider this as an omen of my bad decision. Let me tell you, she doesn't let these things slide, especially when she has a chance to say, "I was right." But I'm forever grateful to her for that. What was supposed to be a milestone day for me and my husband, our 10 years of being together, turned out to be the day Nepal lost 9,000 precious lives, men, women, and children. On my way to the airport, a week later, I saw that people from all over the world, mainly tourists and locals, were sharing food, tent, and water. The conventional distinction between humankind from each other, the gap between the rich and the poor, seemed to have dissolved at that very moment. That day, we were all survivors. I guess nature does not really discriminate. When I think of it, as humans, we struggle through so much hardship and heartbreak, it is ridiculous. But the only way out is to face it, whether it is by developing the acumen to reach for the stairs, like my mother, or the strength to remove an obstacle, like my husband. But we must be willing to survive and persevere, because that is what being alive entails. I have had several challenges since then. Immigrating into a country without knowing a single person, unexpected diagnosis of both my kids being on the autism spectrum disorder, depression to the extent that I don't feel like I belong in this world. But every time life throws a challenge at me, I think of how eternally grateful I should be to just be alive and feel those things, and then march on. Because I, like every other human being on this planet, am a survivor trying to fight our own battles. As they say, adversity is one of life's greatest teachers, and I am a student willing to learn for as long as I shall live. Thank you.